Welcome to another episode of Building Minnesota RØKKR. I'm Brett Diamond. We're missing Ashley. We're missing Midnight today. She's sick, so we hope she feels better soon. Thanks to WeWork for hooking us up with the space and giving us putting a roof over our heads for the next couple weeks here until we're in our permanent facility. Here today we've got Jake Trobaugh and Brian Baraska, coach and analyst here to talk us through how the season's shaping up.
What's going on? Thanks for having us on.
It's too early for me right now. I'm not used to this.
It's like 10 a.m. What time is it now?
It's because I've been up since 8, and that's what's throwing me off.
Poor kid.
Nice. Well, we'll try to power through with the early start and no midnight on the podcast today. So guys, just why don't you start off give us a little bit about what's going on with the team and where you guys are in terms of getting ready for the season.
Yeah, I mean, the team's been grinding scrims for about 2 months now. I think it's been since the game released. I think we're looking pretty good. We kind of had a little bit of a slump in practice over the past week or so, mostly because of the breaks we've taken over Thanksgiving, coming out here to film all the content we filmed, and then going to LA. So we're kind of just adjusting back into things. And I think it was actually good that we started having a little slump now, because we kind of figured out things that we aren't the best at this way, and I think it's going to help us in the long term of things.
Yeah, I think it was a transition period. So prior to Thanksgiving, we were really good. We were getting on every day and barely losing. We took a break for Thanksgiving. Then, as Brian said, we had Gary come out, so that was a week of content where we couldn't practice. So Alex got back to Europe. We got back on to play, and teams were a week and a half, 2 weeks ahead of where we were. So it was a real learning curve, sort of figuring out how to play the new game, because in early stages of a Call of Duty, the game changes day by day. And like Brian said, we've recently found our footing again. I think we found our play style. We were able to sort of do a deep dive into what our players were doing wrong, what we can change, and I think we're on pace. So.
Yeah, it's much better to figure things out now than right before the home opener.
Right.
Definitely. So talk a little bit about just how the schedule works for you guys in terms of what does a typical day look like from a coach's perspective, both of you and the players as well, and talk about it in terms of what's going on right now and then how it looks come January when we're all together in the HQ.
I mean, for me personally, I try waking up a little bit before we start practices. We kind of start our practices around 1 Central every day, so I like getting up a few hours before that, being able to have time to go to the gym, get lunch, and settle before we start playing. I know a lot of players are kind of on that schedule as well. Like ASIM and RØKKR, for example, are both pretty much on that same schedule as me, where they go to the gym every morning. I know Justin's going to be on that as well once he moves out here. It's kind of hard for him, being West Coast right now, to wake up that early and kind of get everything done before practice. And yeah, then we kind of just practice from around 1 to 6 or so most days, and then other days we'll play an extra sets where we end around 8 Central.
Yeah, there's so the scrimmage blocks in the pro scene go first scrim at 2 East, second scrimmage at 4:30 Eastern, and then if you're feeling adventurous and your team has the energy for a third scrim, you typically will try to book a 7 East. That's pretty ad hoc, though. Actually, for the first time in Call of Duty history, we now have scheduling that goes out a week ahead, where every
I heard you played a little bit of a role in that,
yes,
Jake.
Yes, I did. All the coaches were in group chat, this massive chat, complaining about how unstructured it is, and there was just all this complaining, and I was fed up with watching everyone complain. So I think my second message in this chat of 20 coaches was just me dropping the calendar in there, and it said, look, I want one representative from each team coming in this Google Doc. Please fill it out a week in advance. And that was that. But it's nice to sort of have that structure. And then to tackle your second question was how will it change sort of moving into the facility. So those 2, 4, 7 o'clock scrimmage blocks will never change. But we plan to get to the facility an hour early. I think we're trying to go to the gym an hour before on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays. That's right next to the facility. We plan to come in Monday, Wednesday, Friday and watch film an hour early. So even though practice will always start at 1 Central, we're trying to mandate some prerequisites heading into practice just to get everyone focused on what's going on that day.
Yeah, and then after that, players kind of have the freedom to do whatever they like. They can, go home and relax if that's what they want to do. But a lot of players will still play the game at that point, so they'll probably stay at the facility and play tens or, S&D tournaments or stuff like that, or maybe even just go over some film by themselves to kind of just, make sure they're fully on point.
Recently, we've had Adam walk upstairs to our apartment, and me, him, and Brian will sit and just watch some film from that day of practice and talk through it. So it's pretty informal right now, but once we have the facility and everyone's out here, it'll be easy to formalize a lot of the extracurriculars.
Yeah, it's also mind-blowing to me that there's days when we play a 7 Eastern scrim, because that is starting for 1 a.m. for Alex, so he's starting that at 1 a.m. his time, and then he's playing it until like 2:30, 3 a.m.
I swear that kid doesn't sleep.
Yeah, I don't know how he does it.
He stays, so this is ridiculous. He stays up until 3, 4 in the morning to watch regular season NBA basketball games. Diehard NBA fans don't watch all the regular season NBA games.
Interesting.
He does. It's ridiculous.
Okay, we'll have to get him out to a Wolves game.
He
when
loves.
he gets here.
Yeah, he loves it.
He loves basketball.
His form on the court needs a little bit of work though.
Yeah, you guys played a little bit when the whole team was in town, right?
Yeah, we played. Alex watches a lot of basketball, but I think he still needs to learn to
Yeah,
dribble.
his shot is definitely odd to say the least, but this guy's defense is absolutely tenacious. We were just kind of relaxing, playing around, just like 3 versus 3, and this guy is diving across the court.
We're
for
like,
balls.
Alex, stop.
Like, relax. Like, we
Don't
can't
hurt
even
your
his
thumb.
glasses flew down the court. I'm like, all right, you need to relax a little bit. Like, this isn't an NBA game right now.
Kid
you don't got to
hustles.
be playing defense like that.
I like it. That's that. Back when I could run around a little bit more in my younger years, that was probably me because I'm fucking terrible at basketball. But I'll just run around and get in people's faces. So.
We have some hustlers.
I don't know where his energy comes from. I think it's just due to his Diet Coke consumption.
Okay,
Whenever
okay.
I see this guy, he has a bottle of Diet Coke in hand, and that must be where all his energy comes from.
Yeah, we've talked about getting once the guys are in town, doing getting them out to do every major sport and just filming them, try see who's good at what, and
be funny.
have some funny moments.
I mean,
That'd be good.
We're planning to head out to Topgolf, sometime early next month when everyone moves here, because I know they want to, have us all out there, and I think it'd be awesome to just bring a videographer out there and just film everyone, trying to tee off a little bit.
I would love to see that.
So, talk a little bit about what it was like having the players in town, because that was really the first time that we've had all 7 guys together, since they signed with this team.
Yeah, I mean, everyone kind of got along really organically. I mean, Alex never really talked or hung out with anyone on this team. Same with ASIM. I mean, GotterX, they kind of just formed that little 3 to start the team, but he never really hung out with them too much.
It's it's a group of guys that didn't really know each other before this, right? That's what you're saying?
Justin and Adam Assault, hung out because all the times they teamed and everything like that, but the rest of them never really intermingled with these group of players, and kind of they just got along super organically, and it just felt like they were the types of players who just would have been hanging out at events all the time they travel to them.
Yeah, everyone got along really well. I think the most surprising part for me, we've sort of spoke about this on an earlier podcast, but I've been fortunate enough to know almost all of our players on a super deep level, so I was the common denominator for most of our players in terms of I knew all of them really well with the exception of Alex, but I didn't know Devin and Caden. Those kids are hilarious. They are so funny. And I think that helped because the vibes were always up and everyone was always cracking up. We had to go shoot a 2-hour Christmas shoot, which is where all of those crazy pictures came from. And it was wild. We had been doing media the night before, the morning of, and we go and do this Christmas shoot. We see that it's a 2-hour block and everyone's like, oh my God, how are we going to get through this? And it was probably my favorite experience from the entire trip. There has to be film of it, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, we've got the outtake video coming out soon.
It was so funny. That had to have been my favorite.
Without a doubt. I was coughing and wheezing from how much I was laughing over the span.
I cried. I cried from laughing. Tears were
running down my face.
coming down my face from how funny everyone was. I'm excited to see that video drop.
Yeah, it sounded like you guys had a pretty good time. I regretted missing it a little bit. It sounded like it was fun.
I felt bad. I apologized to the photographers. I'm like, I'm so sorry. We're acting like second graders, and I think I was the person
You were
instigating
a lot. You were being very childish.
Yeah, and I was like, I'm so sorry. But it was funny.
I think she told Annie it was like the most fun of a shoot that she'd had.
Really?
Yeah. So she got a kick out of you guys.
I wonder if they always deal with families or if they ever deal with groups like that.
Probably not groups like
definitely not that.
That was so funny. Caden he played basketball the night before, and he played 2 pickup games. And this guy swore that his legs were like broken. He couldn't walk, he couldn't stand. So the whole time he was talking about how badly his legs hurt. And then at one point he said he was low on iron. Like if he stood up, he was just going to black out. And he stood up after this shoot and fell over.
And almost went headfirst into the wall. Like he was an inch off from just going straight into it.
What'd you guys think of Gary Vee and the meetings we had with him and the pep talk he gave the guys?
He's super captivating. So I watch a lot of his stuff on YouTube, Instagram, especially after I came on board with RØKKR and knew that he was a part of it. I spent a whole day just grinding YouTube, watching his stuff, and I liked him a lot. I think I heard you talking about this. Like, you get 85% of what he says from watching him on the screen, but that 15% you don't get. When you meet him in person, it clicks. You're like, holy shit, I get this. Just sitting in meetings with him, watching people walk by, he has this way to make eye contact with the entire room, but at the same time, if he sees someone walking by, he makes eye contact with them, gives them a brief smile, and that person freaks out. He made their day. And you saw people stopping at the window and waving.
Yep.
Just the validity that he holds and the respect that people give him is was fascinating for me to see, and listening to him speak and his ideas were great.
Yeah.
I was just like, damn, how does this guy have this much energy all the time?
Yeah, he's like Alex.
Yeah, he does have a lot of energy, and I mean it was fun when we talked with him a bit when we had him on the podcast. He was talking about how cool of a moment it was for him to address the players and address the team. You know, I think anybody that watches Gary's stuff knows that his like long-term ambition is to own the New York Jets and be an NFL owner. And this is the first time he's been a part owner of a sports team. So that he talked about that being a really cool moment for him to be talking to his team, his players,
the first step.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, and that was cool. And it seemed like the guys were pretty into it when he was in there delivering that message.
He apparently is going to give us a quick little hype speech before we go out and play at our home opener. I'm ready for that.
Nice.
That's going to be cool.
I'm going to have to one-up him after that, though, so it's going to be hard for
You might want to go first.
Yeah, I hope you're watching like a lot of Disney movies and like Miracle and Mighty Ducks, and you got to have that. You got to have that.
Miracle.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, now you're in Minnesota, so Herb Brooks and half that team was Minnesotans. You got to have that like big speech right before everybody runs out for the first time, right?
Brian, just copy it verbatim.
Yep.
I'm not good at memorizing lines.
I'll do it.
I can barely remember song lyrics.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not good at remembering song lyrics.
I feel like those are the easiest things to remember, though. They're like so catchy.
Nah, I gotta listen to a song like 500 times straight to get like the chorus.
It helps if you read. I feel like if I read the lyrics once as I'm listening to it, I'll never forget them. But if I just listen to the song 5 times, I'll know a lot of them. But then I'll read the lyrics and be like, oh wow, I made up like a fourth of this song.
Yeah, it's usually how it goes.
Because you can never fully understand the artist, I feel like.
It depends what you're listening to.
It does depend what you're listening to.
A lot of artists are, very fast with their words, and then there's other ones who are very slow, clear, concise with what they're saying in their lyrics.
Yeah, so I'm curious, Jake, like you went from, because I'm going to have some fun stories too. Like for you went from, working in finance in New York, now you're working in eSports. Tell me what do you see how do you see that conversation going with like your aunt that has no idea what esports is or what Call of Duty is? Like you're doing what, Jake?
So fortunately for me, I competed in high school and college. Mm-hmm. So I was able to have that conversation pretty early on with a lot of my family in terms of what competitive esports was. So now pivoting back toward that, it's a little easier to explain what I'm doing, but I best explain it the same way every time by asking if said person has seen Moneyball, and they all have.
Yep.
And I then tell them that's what I do.
It's pretty good.
The conversation sort of ends there, or there will be questions on the structure of the league, how matches are played. And I find it extremely easy to compare that to a professional sport. So Brian always touches on this. The in-game aspect is like basketball. It's 5-on-5. It's fast-paced. The season is a 22-game season, so it's like an extended NFL season. So I try to pick pieces from each sport that it matches and relay that to the person I'm speaking to, just to give them a sense of what's going on.
Yeah.
So if you want to steal some of that, feel free.
Yeah, I might. It's my wife is from the Boston area, and we try to go there every other year for the holidays, and like her family has a big Christmas party with all their friends and family. And back when I worked for the NFL and the Vikings, we'd usually have to spend a lot of time answering questions, or it's Boston, so they're all Patriots fans, and they talk a lot of shit, and it's just like it's okay, wherever the Vikings are at that point in the season, like I just have to hear Patriots fans just chirp and chirp and chirp. But I'm pretty sure 90% of the people at that party will have no idea what eSports is or what it is that we're doing. So I'm debating like setting up a camera on one side of the room and actually like recording me in my RØKKR Christmas sweater explaining to 60-year-old after 60-year-old after 60-year-old what our team is and what we're doing, and it could be kind of fun.
That'd be so funny. Yeah, I'm super lucky. I come from my family's pretty big, but everyone's extremely, extremely close. I talk about that all the time. When I accepted the job and moved out here, my mom obviously posted about it on Facebook, even though I begged her not to, because that's what my mom does. So all of my family members had either gotten a text from my mom or saw this on Facebook and reached out to me directly to ask me what's going on, what am I doing. So I had the conversation pretty early on, and then Thanksgiving helped fill all those gaps. But you're in for a ride.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Well, we announced the formation of the team on July 1st. So obviously right before 4th of July weekend. So I got all that out of the way with my family at a 4th of July barbecue where got to explain to a dozen or so of my family members. They're like, what's eSports? And then like these were like, cousins and stuff in like their 50s, and their kids are teenagers, and they're like, no, Mom, be cool. They're like, do you know Ninja? I think there's a Ninja. Is Ninja in your game? It's like,
It's easy for you.
Now. Yeah, it was always. I was gonna say it's always been super easy for me because this kind of just been my whole life, from the start. I mean, I was like going to tournaments and whatnot since age 13, and my parents always drove me around to those. So my parents would always talk to people about it and everything, and I've kind of just been invested in it, from the start. There was like 2 years when I wasn't really doing much when I was finishing up college, but this is like my work my entire life. And, I would go serve at some restaurants every now and then to make some money when I wasn't really doing things. But people have known like from the start this is what I'm doing, and it's the route I'm going toward.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for all of us involved, that's at the end of the day, I mean, we joke around about it, but the conversations that I have to explain it to my wife's parents' neighbor. It's like, this is our job. This is what we do,
you
right?
Should hear my grandma
We're here to make it as good as
explain
possible.
what I do.
Yeah.
She can't.
That does sound amusing.
I almost want to record her doing it while I'm home and send it to you guys because it's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
I guess Brian, you saw the vision early.
Not really. I mean, I always just loved going to the tournaments to compete, talk shit to people and kind of win some money and just, for my pride.
Brian used to talk so much shit.
Listen, it's in the past. I don't do that anymore. I'm just good vibes now.
Yeah, now. There was this local tournament called NJ Halo. And I guess it started out as strictly a Halo local LAN in the New Jersey
ran that
area.
scene for years.
They brought in Call of Duty, and this is like when Brian peaked, so like 10 years ago. And And it was when I went to my first ever local LAN and like how I got introduced to real competitive esports. And I just saw this kid standing up and screaming at everyone he played. And he won the tournament. I was like, whoa. I was like, all right, I want to go to another one. So I went to another one, same kid standing up, yelling at everyone he played. These always had these creative gamer tags and was always screaming at people. I was like, oh, so I guess that's like what I have to do to be good. So then when I got decent and I went with a team that I thought could win, that became me. And I was screaming at everyone. And then Brian went to college, so he didn't go to all of these tournaments as much. And then I started winning all of them.
For a little bit before Simp took over.
Yeah, a little bit before Simp came around. Actually, I think I won my second NJ Halo with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I won one in MW3, and then we won the second Black Ops 2 one. Brian beat me in finals of the first Black Ops 2 one, and we won the second.
I didn't go to that one, so that's why you won.
And were these like regional Jersey tournaments, or these are bigger national?
Yeah, so they're in New Jersey, but people from New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, people would actually fly into these. Mm-hmm. They're now hosted in Pennsylvania because I guess there's a New Jersey gambling law that restricts something like that from happening in hotel venues. They hosted a massive weekend tournament in Philly once. The Codzilla. Yeah, Codzilla that everyone flew out to.
It was like a pro-am tournament though, so it wasn't like a strict tournament. There was roster constriction rules and stuff.
These local tournaments, especially NJ Halos, are how you would have to come up in the pro scene. So now everyone says it's impossible to come up now. Players get blessed, this and that. But back then it was even more difficult because if you didn't live in the Northeast, it was so hard. So many pros were tri-state, and they'd go there, and the only way to get noticed was to go there and be good, because there was this preconceived notion back then that anyone could be good online. If you're good online, it's strictly because of your internet. And because your internet's better than the other person, so you killed them. You go to these LANs, take internet out of the equation, and you see the same people coming and doing well. You get a pro's attention. They invite you to pro pickup games. You do well in those. You ultimately end up on a pro team. That was like the only way to come up then.
Yeah, unless you were winning like everything online, like top of the GB ladder, winning all these S&D tournaments, doing well in the PCL, stuff like that. Because a lot of the play back then was, pretty much strictly online for the most part.
But like Black Ops 2.
Yeah, that was like during the whole tournament.
Yeah, that was like the transition.
How do you see that evolve at that path for somebody who thinks they're really good, but is unproven and is looking to get on the map? I mean, how do you see that evolving over time, particularly with franchising? Do you think that changes? I mean, it's not something that changes overnight, but what's your take on that?
I mean, the scene is not as grassroots as it was before. I still think it's going to be similar. If people are doing good online, then they start making that transition to, playing the home series events, stuff like that, where, it's like a 10K prize pool, 20K prize pool. If people are doing good at those, then, people in the amateur scene are going to kind of notice them, and then they just kind of work their way up the ladder to the point where they're winning, the big amateur regionals, kind of like the one we're having here in Minnesota. Like, when you're winning those and doing well and performing against all those top amateur teams, which, consist of a lot of former pros now with how the pro league is, people are going to notice you, and, pro teams are going to be like, okay, maybe let's, sign this guy as a substitute and potentially work him into our roster at some point. Just sign the talent now and make sure we have it for, like, the long term.
Yeah, I agree. COD's definitely not as grassroots as it once was. If you drill down and look at the competitive scene at a really granular level, the scene's really fragmented. And it's really cliquey, predominantly in the amateur scene. So that makes it harder to come up. You really have to pick and choose who you play with, and it's a juggling act, because first of all, you have to be good in online tournaments and win just to get picked up by a decent team. So now you're at this middle-level amateur team. How do you get to a top amateur team? Like, yeah, you play them and do well, but there's also a networking aspect to it. It's become a lot like life. A lot of it's you going out and building the relationship and then showing you're really good. You see a lot of times in the amateur scene, there's a player that's really, really good,
but he just stays in the same circle.
He stays in the same circle, plays with the same people, or he's extremely vocal about how good he is or has a really bad attitude. And you've seen that time and time again where a player's at the cusp of of reaching that pro level, but their attitude holds them back. And if every amateur player knows this guy has a bad attitude, even though Call of Duty's fragmented, amateurs are still friends with pros. They just don't really play with one another frequently. So if a pro player reaches out to this top amateur and says, what do you think about XYZ, and that he does that to 5 people and all 5 say the kid's nasty but he has the worst attitude, he gets on late, this, that, and the other thing, there's no reason to waste time on him. Because once that top amateur comes into the pro scene, as good as he was, he's now a lower tier pro, and it's going to take someone to sort of mentor him and teach him how to play at the next level. And if you're unteachable, what's the point? So I think to come up, 1, you have to be good, start online, win online tournaments. 2, continuously build your circle, and don't be afraid to stop playing with the people you're comfortable with. And 3, take feedback and take advice from those who have done it before.
Even if they're not like at the point where they're pro anymore, like a lot of these people in the amateur scene have been pros before and have played at the top. I mean, there's people who have won tournaments in the past that are in the whole amateur scene. You just need to pick and choose and know if like the circle you're playing with adds value to you, and you kind of need to realize that on your own to see if they're a negative influence or a positive influence. And it's kind of hard for a lot of these players since they're younger and they don't really know like what type of mentorship they need. So I kind of feel bad for some of them in a sense, because they'll get stuck in this circle that, you know, is very negative in a sense, and that attitude and mindset kind of feeds into them and, you know, dictates their whole career from there on out.
Yeah, well, it's a tricky situation.
Interesting. Yeah, it'll be, you know, just as someone that's new to the scene, it's very interesting to, you know, look at how it is now and think about how some of those things evolve over time as teams. You know, the CDL teams think about what resources you put into scouting and, you know, kind of looking at that next generation of talent. So it'll be interesting to watch how it plays out, not necessarily over a year, but over 5 years plus long term.
Luckily for esports, scouting's easy. I mean, you get on Twitch and you watch something. You're not flying out to 30 high schools a year to go sit in the bleachers and watch one high school game.
Yep.
And what if that kid you're watching is a beast, but he has one bad game, and you as a scout, what can you do about that? You watch him play, you watch that one game. You have film, but that doesn't do everything for you.
Yep.
Esports, you have Twitch. If you're interested in someone, you could say, send me of all of your VODs from the last month of you practicing. I want to hear your comms. I want to see you play. Like, everything is so accessible in this industry.
And that's why it's so big and on the trajectory it's on now.
Yep. It's accessible from the scouting standpoint. It's accessible from the playing standpoint. It's acceptable from the physical limitations it takes to play standpoint. I would always compare, when I was playing and competing at my highest level, when I would speak to the validity of esports, I'd put it this way. Like, look, if I'm playing basketball, I could go shoot free throws, or I could go and practice at the gym until, like, my body breaks. Like, how many hours could I spend in the gym? Like, even Kobe. How many hours could Kobe, the hardest worker maybe ever besides Michael, go into the gym and really grind?
Yep.
I could sit at my desk. If I really wanted to be the best Call of Duty player, I could sit there and learn for 16 hours a day. Because it's all brain strength.
Would you burn out at some point?
Yes,
you could.
1,000%.
Yeah,
and that's
you would
what
burn out.
leads to a lot of people retiring, you know, at the age of like 24, 25. Just
Right.
the sheer hours they put in and the burnout.
I think almost every player that comes up, amateur player,
Is putting in that
is
time
putting in that
initially.
time initially. So it's that upfront cost. It's like the initial outlay of being really good is playing that much. And like, if you follow the 10,000 hour rule from Malcolm Gladwell or whoever the author is from Outliers, it just says if you put 10,000 hours into something, you're a master at it. And it's way easier to put 10,000 hours into something that takes very limited physical activity than a sport that does. And that's not saying you shouldn't work out, because we're super
working
heavy.
Out goes a long
working out
way.
goes a long way, but when you're coming up at that initial level,
It's
it
hard.
really is a grind.
Especially
you
when you're
have to be
balancing
the
high
best.
school as well, that's eating up a lot of your time. So it's like you kind of have to just go and put the time in. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it. I wish back when I was in high school and
I
stuff,
agree.
I took the gym more seriously and my sports like more seriously. I kind of like, I always played baseball and stuff, and I would like brush it aside to, you know, games. So I was always just balancing two at the same time instead of committing myself to one. I think you need to find what you're truly dedicated to and commit your resources to that.
I agree. I think Call of Duty almost more so than anything else. There's some people are just naturally talented, just
Genetics,
like in
that's
anything
just how
else.
it is.
Yep.
But esports is the one thing where if you're not working, someone else is.
Yeah.
Like if you are not practicing, there's someone who wants it more than you, and they will get better because it's really easy to improve if you're consistently playing and want to.
It's actually funny you talk about that because I was watching some YouTube video from this bodybuilder the other day, and he was like talking about how he has like really bad genetics. He's like a little blind and all this stuff. He's like, you know, like my genetics are bad, but I don't let that be an excuse for like me going to the gym and, you know, making all this progress. He's like, if people worked even remotely as hard as me, I'd be out of a job. And that's so true to, you know, pretty much any aspect of life when there's people who are, you know, genetically in a better position.
I mean, I'm not recommending anyone does this, and I'm really happy that Call of Duty they've set an 18-year-old age restriction. But when I was in high school, I could go to open events. My first event was my junior year of high school. I was 16 years old, going to high school from 8:45, I think.
I
Till
think I
3.
think mine started earlier than that.
Till 3. Maybe it did start earlier. I would take a nap because of how tired I was from 3 to 5:30, wake up, eat dinner, go downstairs and practice from 6 until 2, 3 in the morning. Like I would fall asleep watching theater back. And like I had a notebook that I kept that I would write shit down in, and I would fall asleep with a pen in my hand. My mom would be like, "Were you studying?" I'd be like, "Yeah, something like that." But, I mean, I was going to sleep at 3 a.m. and waking up at 8 every morning for high school. It really is how... But, I mean, that's anything in life, I feel like.
Time management is so important in this. I wish I knew about time management when I was growing up. Because I was always trying to juggle so many things, especially when I was in college, which is, you know, kind of the reason I was, like, forced to retire. Because I was juggling class, my social life, my, you know, playing professionally at the time. Like, I wanted to, like, do all these things, and I didn't know how to prioritize my time into, you know, marginalized sections.
Yeah, esports is like a startup 24/7. You always are working that hard.
Yeah. I mean, I think for everything, right? You got to find that right balance, and, you know, it's obviously easier to do that later in life.
Yeah,
when you've got a couple of years under your belt.
I wish I found
You
the
guys don't
balance
have
back
many
then.
years as I do, but
If I knew how to balance things back then, you know, I'd probably still be playing at this point, I feel like. But I just always wanted to do so many different things, and I just didn't realize what my priorities were at the time.
Yeah, I guess I don't think I would have been playing. I don't think I saw myself as playing long term. So I guess that's the difference. Like I set a list of things I wanted to do, and I tried to check all the boxes, and the one thing I didn't check was going to X Games, and I realized I probably would never go there, especially because there wasn't going to be another one.
It was only 2 years. I mean, I was lucky enough to qualify for one of them.
Which is so cool. I'm very jealous. But I've been champs, you haven't, so I guess I have you there.
Man, that one still hurts.
Did you beat him to go to champ?
Nah,
was that the
I
story?
didn't play him there. My
beat
team wasn't that
Justin.
good at that.
That's right. I knew you beat I knew you beat one of the guys.
I beat Justin with Adam the event before, or God or X and I beat Justin, and then I beat Justin the next event with Adam Garcia.
It was always so unlucky for me because I was on like good teams like every year and like placing at like that champs level, but whenever the champs qualifier rolled around every year, that was like when I was on my worst team that I was on throughout the entire year.
Yeah, it's so unfortunate.
Because it was always in the middle of the year too and not at the end, which kind of, you know, made it weird. You need a good team like in like the early middle-ish part of the year rather than at the end of the year.
Dude, going to events while you're in college is hard.
It was super hard. That's why I got dropped from the pro league because I couldn't attend an event due to my final.
You miss so many days in high school. Your parents get a letter. They know you're going to these events. You miss 2 classes in college. After that, it's 2 points off your final grade for every class you miss. And you have this 55-year-old professor and you say, look, this is what I'm doing. I'm contracted to do it. I'm contractually obligated to go fly here. Oh, but you're going to play a video game? Well, yes. Okay, well, you're going to go have fun, so you can take your 2-point deduction. And the first 3 events in Advanced Warfare, which was my freshman year of college, were so close to one another that, like, I was getting so many points deducted. You fly out on a Thursday, you miss Thursday, Friday classes. You come back on Monday because you have the intention to play Championship Sunday. So you're missing 2 Monday, Friday classes.
Yeah.
Every event. It's like, it's so hard.
It was really rough.
And that's not taking into the account the time that you should study for exams versus the time you should put into practice.
Yeah.
Like, Orlando was a week before, my finals were a week before Orlando. Or 2 weeks before.
Orlando was in the middle of January.
No, it was in like the beginning of January.
Yeah, you might be right.
It was like right after the New Year. And Bryce Facento and GodRX would be in a call and be like, yo, Jake, when are you getting on? I'm like, I really don't know. I'm so sorry, guys. I need to do this. But even juggling finals, it's hard.
Yeah.
Shout out to Slasher. He was building robots in between tournament rounds.
I've heard those stories. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I think he just scheduled his classes super well and, made it work. I wish I did that same route. He always had things balanced, about as perfectly as you can when he was doing both.
He did it right, and even then it was like really difficult.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he was in a very hard major, but he like sacrificed his whole social life and everything. His life was go to school, do the robotics, play Call of Duty.
I mean, you saw it right after he graduated. I think I may be wrong. I wasn't friends with Austin when he was in high school, but I'm friends with a lot of the players who were. I think he was an athlete in high school. And
yeah, he played baseball and stuff.
Yeah, when he was in college, I mean, he blew up. He didn't have time to go to the gym. It was a nonstop grind for him, and now he's graduated. He's in great shape.
Yeah, he started getting seriously back into it, like a year ago or so.
Which just shows, like, I'm sure he would have been doing that had he could. I mean, he was working out plenty prior to going to college, but watching what it did to him and looking at him before and after, I mean, you sort of see.
Yeah, it's like the guy wasn't even getting haircuts.
Yeah.
That's why he wears a hat all the time.
Shout out to him. Like, that's impressive.
Yeah, Ashley and I had a conversation with him during free agency, and we talked to pretty much every player, and I was super impressed with his knowledge of, I think of all the players we talked to, he was probably the most knowledgeable about the rules of the league and free agency and how that worked.
Everything too. He does all his research.
And I didn't know he had, kind of that, like that he had an engineering degree.
Yeah.
Going into that conversation, and afterwards I said to Ash, I was like, wow, that was, that guy knew the rules as well, better than most teams. And you guys know this, I spent a lot of time studying those rules so that as we went into free agency, we would understand them. And, I certainly wasn't going to be picking the players, but knew that we wanted to have a mastery of understanding of it. And to have a conversation with a player that knew them as well as I did, I was like, wow, that was pretty impressive. And then Ashley explained to me that he's got an engineering degree in this robotic. It's pretty impressive, dude.
He's a smart kid, and I mean, he's known as one of the smarter players in the scene.
Yeah,
like it's almost like don't argue with Austin.
Yeah, his only downfall is he has like a bit of a temper at times, and if you can't deal with that, you're not going to be able to play with him.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about our event in January before we wrap up. So obviously we're hosting the first event, Call of Duty League launch weekend at the Armory here in Minneapolis. We've got tickets on sale now. Pretty exciting way to kick off this team in this season, right, guys?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think starting the season off here is the best thing absolutely possible. Having 3 matches at home to start the season is so sick. A lot of these teams that have been practicing all the time are going to come here and, just play their one match and then go their way. The fact that all our work just leads to this, and then we get a match 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, like, I can't wait.
The Armory is so cool, too.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see what you guys transform that place into.
Yeah. It's going to be awesome. I'm so pumped for that moment when our team comes out for like player, when they're introduced to that crowd for the first time on Friday night. And that place is going to be rocking,
Yeah.
and that's going to be a cool
The
moment.
first tournament every year, there's always the champs at the end of the year, but the first tournament every year, I feel like is always the most hype one, just because it's like the first showing of every team, and it just kind of sets the tone for the entire year.
This is so great. I mean, I've never had a friend come to a tournament with me. Brian and I both have,
I have
three
three
friends
friends
coming to
flying
visit.
in
3
for it.
friends each
That's awesome.
coming to visit just to watch this. They all think it's so cool.
Yeah.
And if they're doing it, then I'm sure so many other people are. Like, this is going to be awesome.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm really excited for the show we're going to put on. You guys know this, but we hired the head of live events for the Timberwolves to put on our in-stadium show, Chris Vanderbeek. He joined us a couple weeks ago. He's awesome. We've got great resources we're putting into just having a really entertaining event. And then obviously having, the centerpiece, it's going to be the competition, and, having our team, compete all 3 days for the first time, on our home turf.
It's going to be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so many question marks, and there's like some really good matchups that throughout the entire weekend too, even like not including our team.
Yeah, definitely. There's tickets available now. ROKKRtickets.gg. Check it out. So again, thanks guys for coming on and coming downtown here to WeWork to join us. Thanks to WeWork for housing us and hooking us up with space for the next. We'll be here for another couple weeks before our permanent offices are ready in January, out in Egan.
Gonna need that.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Get everyone
that'll
under
be good
one
stuff.
roof.
It'll be cool.
All right, thanks guys.
Thank you.